Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the First Things First, a show where we talk about setting our priorities in the right order to help us fall in love with the job again. Today, I am joined by my brother and my friend, Lieutenant Griffin Coiner from Stash Salt. Brother, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, man, I'm happy to have you. This guy right here, he is a husband, he is a father, he's a firefighter, he is a mustache wax connoisseur. So if you guys don't know who he is, you need to look him up and check out Stash Salt. And so, Griffin, welcome, my friend, and tell us a little bit about where you grew up and share with us a little bit about who you are.
Yeah, Griffin Coiner, like you said, I'm a Christ follower, a husband, father, firefighter, mustache wax guy. I actually grew up in Southern California. I grew up about 10 minutes from the beach and an hour from the mountains. So as a kid growing up, it was pretty ideal. I would go to the beach 3 days a week and go snowboarding 3 days a week. Life was good, right? Fast forward, end of high school, I ended up moving to Texas 2 weeks after graduation. My girlfriend of the time, now wife, also moved to Texas at the same time. We knew that we were going to be together. She got into a school out there when I was starting to work, and we were in Texas for about 16 years. And it's just now recently that we've replanted down in Utah. We've been here about 3 years. So it's quite a journey on how we got here. I'm sure we're going to get into all that. But yeah, it's been a heck of a ride, but it's been awesome.
Man, that's awesome. I can empathize a little bit with that life of being near the beach and near the mountains. You know, growing up in Brazil, I was near the beach. I was near the mountain. I got a little bit of. It wasn't quite mountains. I guess I guess forest was more than mountains. But never got to surf down there in Brazil. I had the opportunity to go surf recently. But yeah, man, what a good childhood. Sounds like it was a lot of fun. To Texas, and that's when I'm assuming your fire department journey began. So can you tell us a little bit of like how did you even fall into the fire service, and what was the first day in the firehouse like for you?
Yeah, so before I got into the fire service, all growing up, my dad, all his friends were police officers. All he ever wanted to do was be a police officer. I tell him now that he's tactical, right? Like he never went to be a cop. But all growing up, everything I ever heard was PD, PD, PD. And then my parents were actually in a bad wreck when I was really young. They ended up both having to get cut out, flown out. My dad was in ICU for 22 weeks. He coded 3 times on surgery tables. Really shouldn't be here, right? So later growing up, after all I had heard was PD everything, he kind of sat me down. We were just talking about it one day. And I remember him telling me the story about being hung upside down in his car while they were cutting him out. And he said he was just laying there thinking he was going to die. And this is back in the days when we had all hydraulic tools. And he said he heard the power plant start up and he heard the tools. And he said at that moment he knew there was hope. And that always just stuck with me of like, man, I want to be that hope for somebody that in their worst moment, there's something like there's a chance, there's hope, there's somebody coming to get me. And that just always stuck with me from when I was a young kid, so all growing up, even though he was still more on the PD side of that's what he was passionate about, all his friends, that's what I was surrounded with. I just knew that stuck out. Like, I want to be that hope for somebody. So fast forward, go through school. I originally went to school to build off-road race trucks. So like Baja type stuff. I went to fabrication school, did all that stuff, moved to Texas 2 weeks after school and started working on off-road race trucks. I got on a race team, worked in a couple shops. And I always had that thought in the back of my mind of like, man, I still want to do that, but just never really pursued it until one day I was sitting down with my brother and we were just talking. He's like, are you just going to build race trucks forever? I was like, I don't know, maybe. That sounds pretty good. He's like, well, I thought you kind of wanted to do this. And it kind of like, as we were talking about it, it reignited that spark of like, oh yeah, that's what I'm supposed to go do. And from that second, it was game on. I put myself through EMT school. I put myself through fire academy. I started volunteering. and I just fell in love with it. I couldn't get enough. I went to every possible training. I signed up for every possible thing you could sign up for, volunteered for a while, all while testing different places and just trying to get my first career spot. And finally got the call one day of, hey, we want you to come and be a part of our organization. I remember I was at home by myself. No one was home with me. It was just me and my wife at the time. But I remember getting the call and I was home by myself and I started jumping up and down in circles because I was just so fired up. I was so, finally, I made it. Um, so yeah, I went. It was a great department, smaller department in Texas. I say smaller. It's all relative, but we had 4 stations. It was a great department. And I remember showing up my first day just, I don't know, just so excited to be there. Like there was nothing that could steal that spark from me. I was like, dude, I am all in. I love this. I'm going to go ride on a fire truck and be that hope. Like I was just fired up. So it took me a little while from the volunteer to testing to finally get on. But yeah, I've never really looked back as far as should I be doing something else or anything like that. I love it, but I know we share some values on some things and same points of view. And I would definitely say that my values were not always in line because it was fire first every time, no matter what, for a long time. I'm sure we'll get into that. But yeah, I mean, I was all in, worked there for a while, and then ended up going to the dream department, right? In Texas, it's one of the biggest departments in the country. Lots of fire, no ambulance. That was music to my ears. So it was good. Everything was good.
Yeah, brother. So you talk about really it's almost like a calling. You know, you got that desire in your heart to serve people. And once your dad shared that story with you, and then with that calling too comes a promise from God. And as I said, we're going to get into a little bit of what that calling and that promise of God is for your life. And one of the things that I really admire about you, Griffin, is everybody has, you know, like the tagline of faith, family, fire. You know, it's the thing that, you know, God comes first, and then I'm going to take care of my family, and then I'm going to take care of, you know, serve in the fire department. And you even said that a lot of times you put the fire department first before anything and everything else. You know, your priorities were out of order. And the three pillars that you choose to live by is faith, family, and freedom. So can you share with us a little bit about what those pillars mean to you, to your family, and how you live that out every day?
So when we first started Stash Salt, that wasn't a part of it. It was just more, hey, this is a mad scientist experiment gone well. And we played catch up for a long time of like, whoa, shoot, I wasn't trying to start a business. But as it developed, and to be honest, for a while, I kind of used it for my glory. Like, man, I'm a fireman. I got a smoking hot wife. I got a big lifted truck. I've got tattoos. Like, I'm living the life. Like, look how cool I am, right? Like, I'm the man. And it took a long time for me to fully surrender and say, all right, God, I'm in. I grew up in church. I was what I described for a long time as a Sunday Christian. I knew all the verses, knew all the songs, knew the stories, but there was no heart change. I knew there was things I shouldn't be doing that I still did, but go party on Saturday and go to church on Sunday. So that's why I called myself a Sunday Christian for a long time. I also drank almost every single day from the time I was 15 until 4 years ago. I'm 4 years sober now, and praise God. But so I drank every day that wasn't a shift day, right? And I was doing Stash Salt. I make waxes that are infused with whiskey, some of them. So, all right, one for the wax, one for me, one for the wax, one, like that kind of deal. And my wife and I were still going to church and everything at the same time. And we kind of came to the realization at the same time that God was really tugging on our hearts, saying, guys, I need you to be all in. Like, you can't be half in. You're either in or you're out. So we decided together to basically go all in every way, shape, and form in our lives. We don't get it right all the time, right? We're still human. We still mess up. But we just fully surrendered, and that included Stash Salt. Of God, this is a gift from you. You obviously have been growing this. You've been nurturing this. You've been giving us the reach, the influence, the sales, the everything. So when we basically rededicated the business to Him, we came up with a set of core values, which are faith, family, freedom. So in that, we don't hide away from it. We don't shy away from it. God is first in everything we do. We believe in Jesus dying on the cross, was buried, resurrected for our sins. We believe in the Holy Spirit. He's our messenger that comes and helps us through this walk of life. Family, we were very intentional about how we put this because not everybody has a great family in this world, right? So we were very intentional about putting in there blood or bond. Not everybody's family is their mom, dad, brother, sister, whatever. Some people you meet across the country and you're instantly connected, right? So we were very intentional to be it's blood or bond that builds that family. And then freedom was about the same time. I'm sure we'll get into the story of the last fire department, but it was it was very much a calling on us of like, hey, you guys are supposed to live in freedom. You're free from those chains that I broke from you, but you're also free to pursue my word, God's word, and to live for Him in every single part of it, whether that's business, friendships, the fire department, everything. So I don't know if we were going to get to this. I actually have a verse right here that was instrumental in this as we were going through that. But it's Galatians 5:13. For you were called to freedom, brethren, only do not turn your freedom into an opportunity for the flesh, but through love serve one another. For the whole law is fulfilled in one word in this statement: you shall love your neighbor as yourself. So it was just like God gave us this new opportunity, this new freedom from strongholds in our life. And He said, this freedom isn't for you. Like, yes, you're the benefactor of it, but it is for you to go out and serve other people in this freedom that I've given you. So, yeah.
Man, that's awesome. I love it, and I love the pillars, the tagline, and the mission that you and the wife and the family are living out. And it's great to be in what God has for us. And sometimes He asks us to step out in faith, right? And you had exactly that. And we talked a little bit about, we read about these Bible characters that they have to sometimes take a big step of faith, and you had to take one of those big step of faiths a couple years ago. The world was in a bit of a crazy environment, and people were asking us to do things that was not lined up with what we believed in. So can you share with us a little bit about what that journey of faith was for you and your family, and how that ultimately fulfilled a promise of God for you?
So, before I get into all that, I started the fire service in 2010. At that point, I was still what I said, a Sunday Christian, but I started the fire service 2010. Before that, I was still working on trucks and all that. It was, I don't remember exactly, it was 2007 or 2008. I remember my wife and I were walking into the gym one morning. I heard the audible voice of God say, you're going to work for Fort Worth and you're going to be a lieutenant. And like at that point, fire wasn't even on my mind yet, but I remember hearing that so specifically, and I was like, sweet. Like, yeah, good for me, right? Um, Fast forward, I start in 2010. I go to that first department and life was good. I really didn't have any desire to change or start over or do any of that. But I was getting to that cutoff in Texas. I was like, well, I guess I'll just throw my name in the hat and just see what happens. So I tested, back then there was a couple thousand people testing for a couple spots. I ended up getting hired and it was awesome, right? I got hired with a lateral class. It was like a condensed academy, but went through, did the Proby thing, got assigned to a good station. Life was good. We were super busy. Decent amount of fire. Like I said, no ambulance, which is a huge win in my book. But no, life was good. But I wasn't thinking about that promise, right? I didn't think about it until later, but I like in the back of my mind, he's like, all right, you're going to work for Fort Worth. You're going to be a lieutenant. And I was like, sweet. That's what's coming for me. Like I'm winning. Fast forward a couple of years, and the world changed a little bit, right? The big COVID scare of the whole world, and there started being things I think everywhere that people didn't agree with or didn't make sense or whatever the case may be, wherever you were, whatever you believe, all that kinds of stuff. Let me make it very clear, I'm not anti anything. I'm not mad at anybody. I don't hold a grudge at anybody or anything or any department or anything. But this was about the same time that my wife and I had decided, like, hey, we're fully going to surrender our lives to God and just see what happens. Um, so for about 6 months, we started praying this big prayer because we were kind of wondering what the plan for Stash Salt was specifically, is what we were praying about. It was never intended to be this giant mega mustache company, right? It was kind of like, hey, we use this to give back to people. We have a little bit of extra money. Like, it was our camping money, basically. It was like, hey, we go camping all the time. We'll just use this to go camping, and a little bit of extra on the side. But that was never the goal, was to live off of it or anything like that. So for about 6 months, we were praying, God, if you want this to grow, I want it to be explainable that only you made it happen. And we prayed that every single day for about 6 months, until one day I showed up at the fire station, had coffee with the boys just like every morning. I was at a double company house, so shift change, there's lots of dudes around, right? So we're all just hanging out, drinking coffee. I put my gear on the rig just like I did every morning, and there comes a email, hey, today you have to do this or else. And I was like, well, I'm not going to do that. I've told tons of lies in my life. I have not always acted with integrity. I've not always been the one to do the right thing. But I was at that point where I was like, God, I'm all in. I surrender. Whatever you say, I'll do it. And they said, all right, go do this thing. And I said, I'm not going to do that. And what was, I guess, shocking, like I said, this isn't a dig on anyone or department or anything. I have no bad feelings towards any of that. But what I was told is, we don't actually care if you do this. Just go make sure your name ends up on that piece of paper. So I was actually more encouraged to lie than I was to go do the thing. And I said, I can't do that. And they're like, well, we're going to send you home. I said, well, I guess if that's what needs to happen, then that's what needs to happen. And I think maybe it was me being petty or whatever, but before I left, I said, this is an interview question that every single one of us answered the same way. You're at this fire station and everyone's telling a lie, and you have an opportunity to do the right thing. What are you going to do? I said, every single one of us answered that the same way. But I ended up going, getting my gear off the rig, going home. I called my wife and told her, and I said, hey, this is what's going on. And she's like, well, what does that mean? I said, I don't really know yet. I was like, it looks like I might be taking a huge pay cut. Like, I'm not going to be able to go back. And she says, well, says who? So it was just such a cool moment, like in that uncertainty of her, just to be that pillar of faith of like, well, says who? Like, if God's asking us to do that, then cool. So we took that as an answer of like, hey, if you want me to grow this and you say it wants to be explainable that only I could make it happen, then put your money where your mouth is and take that step. So I did. I ended up being, I guess, forced to resign. I was told I was not allowed to come back until I either put my name on that paper or did that thing. And I said, I guess I'm done. So I was kind of, I don't want to say pushed out, but I wasn't able to go back. So with that, we're now fully dependent on Stash Salt overnight. Like I said, it was never intended to be our money maker. It was never intended to be how we paid the bills. Like I said, it was just extra on the side. And then one day, a buddy from my old department calls me up. He goes, hey, I have someone that wants to buy your house. Do you want to sell it? I was like, no, it's not for sale. I just finished rebuilding the whole house. I built countertops. I literally painted everything. I rebuilt a ton of stuff in the house. All I had left to do was baseboards. And I was like, no, like, I've put a lot of sweat and time into this house. No way. And he goes, hey, well, they want to give you this much. I said, oh, maybe. So they came and looked at it, and they called me back like a week later, like, we're not going to do it. And then I didn't hear from him for a couple of weeks. I was like, well, I guess that answers that. And then he called me back. He said, well, actually, they want to give you this much. I said, oh, I guess we're selling our house. So, in a matter of a few weeks, I went from having my dream job, basically, to now I'm going to sell my house and we don't have anywhere to go. I mentioned camping quite a bit. We always used to tent camp. We spent lots of weekends in a tent, and we'd always kicked around the idea of like, maybe it's time we get a camper. You know, like we go camping all the time. Maybe we should get one. And we never found one that we really liked or anything. And the one that we found that we really liked, it was never available. And then come to find out, like anytime you would find that one, it would be gone instantly. Then I saw one day there was one like an hour and a half away in Texas, and I called them. I said, hey, do you guys have this one? Yeah, we just got it in. I was like, all right, I'm on my way. So we went, bought a camper, sold our house, sold everything, and moved into a camper. And we were in there for about a year and a half. So it was wild.
Man, that's a wild ride, right? And
Yeah.
that is quite literally a story of stepping into faith, stepping out of the boat into the water. I'm sure that it's something that you read in the Bible, those types of stories, and it doesn't really seem real until you go through one of those stories yourself, like you did. So how did that change your relationship with God? How did that change your family's ability to just trust in the Lord?
Yeah. It was the only way to describe it is it was incredible. So when we had everything, right, like life was good, good job, good family, good school districts, all that kinds of stuff, good house, a cool business on the side. And then all of a sudden, all we had to rely on was God Himself. So it was really like we didn't have a choice other than to trust Him, which was a daily one foot in front of the other of God, what do you have for us today? We didn't have this big grand plan of like, all right, let's just go travel around and like we'll hit all these spots and it'll just be this cool vacation, right? Like it was literally like we have no idea what we're doing. We have no idea where we're going. But because we were so dependent on Him, it literally was a day by day walking in faith. And I guess through that, He grew our faith even more because it was like, He is trustworthy. He does show up. He does do what He says He's going to do. Our family got closer than ever, not just proximity wise, because right now we went from a house on a little bit of land. Now we're all within 40 feet of each other all the time. But it was so cool. It was such a cool experience that we were just walking through it together and like on full dependence on God. I don't know. It was so cool. In the Bible, everyone's heard the verse, Psalm 119, 105. Your word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. From what I understand, in biblical times, when they would travel at night, they would actually tie candles to the tops of their sandals, and it would literally give them just enough light for the next one step. So we prayed that, and that's literally how God was leading us. It was like, God, what's this big plan? He's like, well, you don't get the big plan, but I'm going to give you just enough to take the next one step, and then the one step after that, and then the one step after that. And after we did that for a year or so, we're 20 steps down the road, and we were in the right place to take the next step where He showed up again for us. So, yeah, it's been
Man, that's
super cool.
again, taking those steps of faith. It's like waiting for manna to come the next morning. Like
Yeah.
is it going to be there or not? And for sure, man, that's a beautiful story of faith that you're sharing. And I am sure that also changed your relationship with the fire service. And I don't know if there was any kind of resentment or if there was any of those types of feelings, or if you're at this point, like, are you done with the fire service? You're just going to be doing stash salt. How is that feeling for the job at that time?
So to be honest, I was very mad at the fire service. I don't know if mad is the right word. I was disgruntled. I felt betrayed. All of my quote unquote brothers were no longer brothers. Hey, you're not wearing the same t-shirt as us anymore. You're out. Kind of deal is what I experienced a lot of. But on the flip side, I had a lot of dudes and a lot of people from across the country come and wrap their arms around us and be like, "Hey, we're here with you." But it was a very conflicting time just being, hey, I was a fireman. I love the fire service. I'm all in. I love training. I go to all these trainings. We have stash salt, which is pretty integrated with the fire service as well. Obviously, our logo, everything we do is some sort of fire or first responder related. So I was in a weird place of like, man, am I still one of the guys? Am I still in? Am I not in? And it took me a long time to basically be like, God was asking me to lay it down. He was asking me to surrender it because there was times when I loved it more than I loved him. And he was being like, do you fully trust me? If you do, give it back. Like, give it back to me. And what I didn't think at the time was like, and let me show you how I'll make it better. But it was really, do you trust me? You say you're all in. You say you're surrendering. Like, do you really surrender? And it took me a while to actually be like, all right, I did it. I guess I'm done. It was good when it was good. And I'm grateful for my time in there. Like, no hard feelings. And let's just move on and do stash salt. And we were traveling around for a while. And again, I'm not that great of a planner. There's no way that I could have orchestrated all the things that God planned for us while we were traveling, from showing up to conferences to trainings to like showing up to a random podunk town and there'd be no RV spots available. And they'd be like, oh, well, we have one for the next 3 nights. And we're like, perfect. That's the 3 nights we needed. We're just passing through. And like stuff like that would just continually happen of like, he made a way when there was no way. And while we were traveling around, my wife and I, we got lots of windshield time, right? So we got lots of long conversations. And we constantly were like, man, wouldn't it be cool if we could just do stash salt and like go and be involved in all these trainings? Like you can still help train people, you can be involved in the trainings, but we could also do stash salt there. And we talked about that time and time again of like, man, how cool would that be? Um, Fast forward a couple years now, um, we we were traveling all over. After all this happened, I bought some land in Colorado, actually, and my plan was to just go disappear in the mountains. I was like, I'm done with people. I was kind of butthurt at a lot of my friends, to be honest, and I was like, I'm just gonna go disappear and run stash salt. We'll travel around while we build a house, right? We'll save up some money, build a house, and I'll just go disappear in the mountains. And so we bought the land. We traveled around, and for whatever reason, whenever we would come through Utah, like this was just like a main crossroads for where we would go on our journey. We have family in California still. We went up to Washington, Texas. Like for whatever reason, just the way the highways were, we would always pass through here and Salt Lake City, and we would always end up staying. And I had a couple customers at the time that are some of my best friends now, but whenever we would pass through town, I would be like, "Hey, we're in Utah. Anybody like? Can I come visit any stations?" And we ended up getting pretty close with some of the guys. They would invite the whole family down for Thanksgiving dinner, and like it was just like we just fell into that station, and they were just like, "Hey, you're a part of our family." Um, Fast forward a little ways. Hey, we have an opening. We want you to come work with us. And in my head, I was like, man, I'm moving to Colorado. I'm getting out of here. I'm going to go disappear. So I basically told him no for about a year. And then I got a call from the chief one day, and he's like, hey, we have a spot. The guys really want you to come be here. Like, what do you think? And I told him, no, like, thanks, but no thanks kind of deal, chief. Um, Fast forward a little bit, he calls me again. Hey, we have this spot. Like, come in and meet with me next time you're coming through town. So I did, and he sat me down. Hey, we want to make you an offer. And I told him, I was like, Chief, I've been through 3 fire academies. like none of my certifications transfer over. I don't want to go through rookie school again and all that kinds of stuff. And he straight up told me, he said, well, we hire people, not certs. We'll worry about that later. And in my head, I was like, what? That's not how the fire service works. Not any fire service that I've ever known, at least. Right? Like you show up with everything squared away, your T's crossed, your I's dotted, like, hey, this is why I should work here, right? It was hey, we want you to come here. So my wife and I prayed about it for a little while, and honestly, I didn't want to go back. I was like, I did it. It was awesome. I loved it, but like I was still kind of butthurt at the fire service, to be honest. And I was like, I don't know if I want to go back. And like I tried to tell God no for about 6 months, and He just made it so abundantly clear of like, hey, I need you to go here, go here, go here, go here. So I finally was like, all right, Chief, I'm in. So I ended up starting over, and they took care of. I didn't have to go through all the schools and stuff again. I had to take the tests just to transfer my certs, and they took care of all that stuff, which was super cool. And they basically gave me my years of time and all that kinds of stuff. And so I've always loved driving. I've always loved operating apparatus, pumps, trucks, aerial. Like I just love operating all the equipment. Setting the other people up for success is like in my mind, like that's what the driver does. Like he makes sure that the team has all the tools to win the fight, and that's always been like my sweet spot. So I mentioned earlier that that promise from God before I was even in the fire service. He said, "You're going to work for Fort Worth, and you're going to be a lieutenant." So like all this stuff happened. I ended up being forced to resign. I'm like, well, I guess I worked for Fort Worth, but I wasn't a lieutenant. At least half the promise came true. Like, that's still pretty cool. But at this department, which is the only department I've ever heard of in the nation that I've experienced, calls their drivers lieutenants. And I ended up promoting pretty quick after I was there. So he kept his promise of you work for Fort Worth and you're going to be a lieutenant. So I'm now a lieutenant here. My main, I guess, operation or job description is I'm the operator, but I'm also like the step up captain or acting officer or whatever. So yeah, so what I can say is he keeps his promises. They don't look how we think they're going to look, and they're not always in the timeline that we think they're going to be in. But he always shows up like he says he will. And however many years later, that promise was like, here you go. And I was like, oh, that's how it works. So, yeah.
That is a beautiful story, a story of just trusting in God and Him delivering on the promises that sometimes, like you said, it doesn't look like what we thought it would look like. And it just took you, the wife, and your family just hanging on and trusting in what God had for you guys for Him to deliver it. Man, what a beautiful story, man. And I love that part of the story when the chief says, we don't hire certs, we hire people. Man, and this is after you turned him down. Like, people don't turn down the fire department. You turned him down a couple of times. And man, what an amazing story, Griffin. I love that story. And so it obviously has impacted your family in a huge way and affected your relationship with other people in the fire service. And we already talked a little bit about the brotherhood in the fire service. So how has your story up to this point, what have you experienced in the fire service as far as your brothers and sisters in the fire service? What has that been like for you and your family?
I say fortunately and unfortunately, we've experienced both extreme ends of it of, hey, you're not wearing the same t-shirt anymore, you're out, to recently my daughter went through a major surgery, and which is also another crazy part of the story. I'll tie it back in. But she had a major surgery, and the outpouring of this community specifically came and wrapped their arms around us and basically walked through that with us. They showed up at the hospital with us. They took care of our needs. Like, there was a meal train for weeks, people making donations. Like, we weren't asking for donations, we were just asking for prayer, and people showed up abundantly, and it was just so humbling and so cool to see. Stash Salt from the beginning has been kind of like a, hey, our tool to help others. And it was so humbling to be on the receiving end of that. I think most of us guys, especially, but most of us first responders, it's our desire to help others, but we're not good at asking for help. So it was super humbling to finally say, like, all right, God, like, we need help. And to put that out there and for people to show up, wrap their arms around us, and be there for us, it was so cool. So people say brotherhood's dead, or the internet has so many opinions on whatever topic you want to talk about that day, but the right people show up every time, and it's so cool to see.
Man, that's awesome. Once again, and I got to witness a little bit of that story happening online, and I reached out to you, prayed for your family, prayed for your daughter, man, and what a blessing it was to see how people just embraced you guys, prayed over you guys, and your daughter's doing well. She's I know she's recovering well, and it's really cool to see that story, Griffin. And man, unfortunately, I don't have the stash that you have. I did, just so everybody knows, I did show Griffin a picture of me with a full mustache, and he can verify that I can, in fact, grow a mustache. But
It's a good one.
tell us a little bit about Stash Salt, man. You already shared a little bit about kind of like how it started, what it's all about, and I love y'all's tagline. Spread salt is about spreading the salt. So tell us a little bit about that.
So, to be honest, Stash Salt, like I said, kind of started on accident. It was a mad scientist experiment gone well, is how I describe it. I made some mustache wax and kind of threw it out there of like, hey, check this out. And people instantly said, how do I buy it? So I told my wife, she's a graphic designer. She does all of our website stuff, all the labels, all that. But I said, we need a logo. I said, it needs a skull, a mustache, and a fire lid. So as you can see, she came up with the logo, and we started making some sales. And our thought was never, all right, this is, like I said earlier, like, this isn't our business to just make a bunch of money on or anything. And where I used to work, one of my chiefs got diagnosed with cancer, and his family was struggling with the bills. So we were like, shoot, that's a no-brainer. Let's just use this to give back to his family. So we did. We made sales for a few months, and we went to the Christmas banquet. And hey, chief, for no other reason other than we can and we love you, here's a check for you, and there you go. We love you. And that's kind of stayed the mission. We're at about 8 years now. So it's evolved a little bit over the years. We don't necessarily align with any one organization or anything like that, as far as like, here's where we donate on the 15th of every month, they expect a check from us. Our goal is kind of just to step in the need whenever we can and there's one available. And I know, unfortunately, there's needs all the time, and I wish we could fulfill every single one of them. But yeah, we sell and we donate to different causes. We've done special blends to raise money for different families. And we've done chapsticks to raise money for the kids of firefighters that are sick. We didn't really want it to be like this is the only way we can help. This is everything has to be money, everything. Like, we want to come alongside people, let them know that they're not alone. So another thing we do now is, I mentioned it earlier while my wife and I were driving around, we were talking like, man, how cool would it be to go to all these trainings and you can train and like we can have Stash Salt there and like we can do it as a family. So now I'm one of the cadre members for Ambassadors of the Craft. We have a couple different classes, but we travel all over the nation and set up at conferences like March Mayhem, MAFC in Georgia. Like, we've gone to all these places. We've gone to Bearers of the Oath, and basically my family comes with me. What we do is we call it the hydration station. My wife will basically set up our booth. We bring coffee makers. We get a whole bunch of snacks and drinks and shade and water and just everything that the people might need at these conferences, because a lot of these places are kind of far out at the training center. There's not lunch nearby and stuff like that, so we just basically bring what people are going to need, and we just go out there and set up and just provide snacks, water, all that stuff for everyone attending the conferences while I'm out there instructing and being a part of it that way. So yeah, my family comes with. My daughter loves setting up the tables and making sure they're organized and having everything facing just the perfect way. My boy is just running around the fire grounds and getting in the way and wanting to spray water and playing in the runoff from everything. But yeah, it's just a super cool way. I know you and I talked about that on a live a few weeks ago of when people think giving back or helping, immediate thought is always, all right, money. Let's give money, which definitely has its place. It is the tool that makes the world go round, right? But I think just showing up for people in that way of just like, hey, we just want to give you this guys or give you guys this stuff just cuz it goes a long way, and people are always so appreciative. We've been super grateful to all the conferences. They're like, yeah, we want you to come do that. So it's super cool. And it's just a way that we're just involved. We get to do it as a family. We get to give back, and everybody wins. I don't know. It's super cool.
That's awesome. I love it. I love the whole family doing these things together, getting your wife and the kids in there to just share and for them also to see what it is that you're doing. And one of the
Yeah.
things that you started doing recently, and I love, and you can talk to us a little bit about that, is the Bible giveaways. You just posted online one time and says, "Hey, do you need a Bible?" And how did that go?
Yeah, honestly, it was super overwhelming in a good way, right? That's a beautiful, beautiful thing. I'll actually give credit to my wife on that. That was her idea. She was just like, hey, what if we just did this? What if we just gave Bibles away to people that need them? Again, we love donating to different causes. We love doing all the different forms of serving people and all that. But that was just a super practical way of like, hey, not everyone has a Bible, and how can they read it if they don't have it? So let's just, if someone wants one, why don't we just give them one? So yeah, we put that out there, and it was hundreds and hundreds of Bibles almost overnight. We're still shipping them out, we're still catching up. We were not expecting that much want and need for it, but it's been so cool to see. It's been so humbling, a real tangible way to what we say, right? Spread the salt, to give back, to spread the good news. God asks us to be the salt and the light. I know a lot of people have heard that, salt and light. I have it tattooed on my hands. I don't know if you can see it. Salt, light, just a constant reminder for me, accountability
Nice.
for me. But what that means, I mean, in the biblical times, salt was more than just a table flavoring, right? Like it was something more than just that. It was so it had like preserving qualities, like they would rub on their meats. It added flavor, obviously, just like we use it now. And it was used for healing as well, like on wounds and stuff like that. So when we say spread the salt, our mission, our goal, our biggest priority is to point people to Jesus, to point people to the cross, and mustache wax and men's grooming is just the how. So I think it's not always the most ideal to get out on the street corner and say turn or burn, right? That has a place and some people need to hear that, right? But I think just by being the salt and light, and by what I mean by that is spreading the gospel in a way that's appealing, that is it's adding flavor to their life. You're not just saying these things, but you're showing it by how you're living. So the way I talk about salt and light is the salt is like you're adding flavor, you're making something appealing, you're adding healing. So with my words, and then light is what people can see, right? Like you're drawing people to the light. God is light. So with my words and with my actions, what I say and what people see is how that all ties together. That's our goal. Is if we've my wife and I have talked about this quite a bit. If we do all this and spend our whole life doing stash salt and it brings one person to Jesus, it's worth it. So that's kind of how we tie all that in of yeah, salt and light. Spread the salt.
Man, that's amazing, brother. I don't think I can ask any more questions. That's the perfect way for us to close it out. Once again, Griffin, thank you for coming on. Your mission, your family mission is beautiful. What you guys are doing with Stash Salt is amazing. So how can people reach out to you and obviously get all the awesome stuff that Stash Salt has to offer? How can they get connected and perhaps even join in the mission that you guys have?
Obviously, the easiest way is stashsalt.com. We have all of our info on there as far as products, mission, how you can contact us, all that kinds of stuff. We're pretty active, if anyone knows, on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all that stuff. So send me a message on there, just at Stash Salt. It's pretty easy. Or if you want to reach out to me personally, I'm on there as that stash guy. I'm more than happy to have conversations with people, answer any questions. Just, hey, if you need prayer or if you want to tell me that my mustache wax sucks, that's fine too. Hey, that's good feedback, right? So, Stash Salt, that stash guy, stashsalt.com. I'm pretty accessible, I would say. I do my best. If anybody ever looked at my phone, I've told you guys this before, that they would just look and say bummer, because there's a billion messages on there all the time that I'm trying to get back to. But if you send me one, I'll do my best to get back to it. I try to respond to everybody. So I promise I'm not that cool. I just get a lot of messages. So
Once again, thank you for coming on. Everybody, this is Lieutenant Griffin Coiner, Stash Salt Guy. Go check him out. Go check and see what him and his family are doing. If you like this, don't forget to subscribe and share with somebody. We got to get this message out there. Be the salt, be the light. And don't forget, put the first things first. And we'll see you guys next time.